This presentation is for Standard 6.2, Criterion 20, Standard 6.3, Criterion 21, and Standard 6.4, Criterion 22. My name is Victoria Matejcek, and this is for iTech 7500. Standard 6.2, Criterion 20, manage the use of technology for learning in a non-traditional classroom setting. One way I managed the technology and cut back on the students' need for my help was through the use of my IT pros. Students were directed to troubleshoot and/or problem solve first through searching tutorials and through trial and error. If they were unable to troubleshoot on their own, they were directed to ask our class IT pros for help. The IT pros not only helped students troubleshoot, but they also aided them in staying on task and notified me if and when there were any students that were off task. Because the focus was on the process, not the product, I really encouraged them to try to work through their problems on their own, and if they were unable, that was okay because it was more about the effort and ability to try to problem solve. Another way I managed the use of technology was by requiring the students to create a plan first. This helped give the students a guide to follow and therefore kept them on task and with a specific idea in mind. By having their story written out first with a clear beginning, middle, and end, students already knew the basic outline for their story and cut down on any playing or confusion. Students were highly engaged and it was evident in the digital stories they were creating. They did a great job of thinking creatively and coming up with their own unique ways of representing their word problems. They were rarely off task and were excited each day when it was time to continue work on our block coding. The assignment was student driven and the students were motivated to get their projects to work properly, which makes it authentic and meaningful. Standard 6.3, Criterion 21, create opportunities for students to use a design process and/or computational thinking. Before we began planning our word problems for our digital stories and coding our digital stories, students were given time to play. We took this time to watch tutorials, explore Scratch, experiment with adding sprites and backgrounds, and making our sprites move and/or talk. Students really enjoyed playing with the various block coding options. After students played with Scratch, students were given the task to plan and create the word problems for their digital stories. They were required to choose characters, a setting or multiple settings, a problem for their story, and then design a plan for their story by providing a beginning, middle, and end of their story. Students were then asked to show the equation to their word problem and the solution. Then they had to explain the process to solve their word problem. Solutions were left out of their digital stories because their peers would be later solving their word problems. Standard 6.3, Criterion 21, continued. The artifacts above show one of my students' block coding for each of the two dinosaurs in her story and the basketball. Her digital story was a success and all her characters' codings worked efficiently. The students used computational thinking by coding all of the elements of her digital story. After creating their digital stories, students rotated to one another's laptops to solve the word problem from their story. The original plan was for them to share their stories with me and then we would solve the whole group on the board. However, Scratch requires students to confirm their email addresses, and in order to do so, and students do not have access to their emails. The original plan was for students to share their projects on Seesaw, watch each other's stories, and provide feedback via Seesaw. However, due to time constraints and the students' inability to share from Scratch, we shared our reflections via Nearpod. Students provided feedback on the construction and overall thoughts on their projects. They were asked to share what they thought they did well and things they would like to improve for next time. Then students shared things they liked about each other's digital stories. Standard 6.4, Criterion 22, Model and Nurture Creativity. Once student projects were complete, because we were unable to share projects from Scratch, students rotated to one another's laptops and solved each other's word problem. This picture shows one of the final projects with the word problem written next to it. Students enjoyed solving each other's word problems and watching the digital stories they each had created. They loved seeing all the different things they were each able to accomplish with their coding. Students were given the opportunity to provide feedback on their own personal projects as well as each other's. We used the Collaborate board on Nearpod, and students shared thoughts on personal strengths and areas to improve. Students were then given the opportunity to share thoughts on each other's digital stories anonymously. Because I had taught digital citizenship and appropriate ways to use the internet beforehand, all students' comments and feedback were constructive and mostly complimentary. Thank you for listening.